Hello everybody, I'm Daisy and welcome to Flower Scenes. Today I will be reading The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate Dicamillo, chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5. The house on Egypt Street became frantic with activity as the Tulane family prepared for their voyage to England. Edward possessed a small trunk, and Abeline packed it for him, filling it with his finest suits and several of his best hats, and 3 pairs of shoes, all so that he might cut a fine figure in London. Before she placed each outfit in the trunk, she displayed it to him. "Do you like this shirt with this suit?" she asked him. Or, "Would you like to wear your black derby? You look very handsome in it. Shall we pack it?" And then finally, on a bright Sunday morning in May, Edward and Abeline and Mr. and Mrs. Tulane were all aboard the ship standing at the railing. Pellegrina was at the dock. On her head she wore a floppy hat strung around with flowers. She stared straight at Edward. Her dark eyes glowed. "Goodbye!" Abeline shouted to her grandmother. "I love you!" The ship pulled away from the dock. Pellegrina waved to Abeline. "Goodbye, lady," she called. "Goodbye." Edward felt something damp in his ears. Abeline's tears, he supposed. He wished that she would not hold him so tight. To be clutched so fiercely often resulted in wrinkled clothing. Finally, all the people on land, including Pellegrina, disappeared. Edward, for one, was relieved to see the last of her. As to be expected, Edward Tulane exacted much attention on board the ship. "What a singular rabbit," said an elderly lady, with 3 strings of pearls wrapped around her neck. She bent down to look more closely at Edward. "Thank you," Abeline said. Several little girls on board gave Edward deep glances full of longing. They asked Abeline if they might hold him. "No," Abeline said. "I'm afraid he's not the kind of rabbit who likes to be held by strangers." 2 young boys, brothers named Martin and Amos, took particular interest in Edward. "What does he do?" Martin asked Abeline on their second day at sea. He pointed at Edward, who was sitting on a deck chair with his long legs stretched in front of him. "He doesn't do anything," said Abeline. "Does he wind up somewhere?" asked Amos. "No," said Abeline. "He does not wind up." "What's the point of him, then?" said Martin. "The point is that he is Edward," said Abeline. "That's not much of a point," said Amos. "It's not," agreed Martin. And then, after a thoughtful pause, he said, "I wouldn't let anybody dress me like that." "Me either," said Amos. "Do his clothes come off?" asked Martin. "Of course they do," said Abeline. "He has many different outfits, and he has his own pajamas, too. They are made of silk." Edward, as usual, was disregarding the conversation. A breeze was blowing in off the sea, and the silk scarf wrapped around his neck billowed out behind him. On his head he wore a straw boater. The rabbit was thinking that he must look quite dashing. It came as a total surprise to him when he was grabbed off the deck chair, and first his scarf and then his jacket and pants were ripped from his body. He heard his pocket watch hit the deck of the ship, and then held upside down. He watched the watch roll merrily toward Abeline's feet. "Look at him," said Martin. "He's even got underwear." He held Edward aloft so that Amos could see. "Take it off!" shouted Amos. "No!" screamed Abeline. Martin removed Edward's underwear. Edward was paying attention now. He was mortified. He was completely naked except for the hat on his head, and the other passengers on board the ship were looking at him, directing curious and embarrassed glances his way. "Give him to me!" screamed Adeline. "He's mine!" "No," said Amos to Martin. "Give him to me!" He clapped his hands together and then held them open. "Toss him," he said. "Please," cried Adeline. "Don't throw him. He's made of china. He'll break." Martin threw Edward, and Edward sailed naked through the air. Only a moment ago the rabbit had thought that being naked in front of a shipload of strangers was the worst thing that could happen to him. But he was wrong. It was much worse being tossed in the same naked state from the hands of one grubby, laughing boy to another. Amos caught Edward and held him up, displaying him triumphantly. "Throw him back!" called Martin. Amos raised his arm, but just as he was getting ready to throw Edward, Adeline tackled him, shoving her head into his stomach and upsetting the boy's aim. So it was that Edward did not go flying back into the dirty hands of Martin. Instead, Edward Tulane went overboard. Chapter 6. How does a China rabbit die? Can a China rabbit drown? Is my hat still on my head? These were the questions that Edward asked himself as he went sailing out over the blue sea. The sun was high in the sky, and from what seemed to be a very long way away, Edward heard Adeline call his name. "Edward!" she shouted. "Come back!" Come back? Of all the ridiculous things to shout, thought Edward. As he tumbled, ears over tail, through the air, he managed to catch one last glimpse of Adeline. Here is a picture. She was standing on the deck of the ship, holding onto the railing with one hand. In her hand was a lamp. No, it was a ball of fire. No, Edward realized it was his gold pocket watch that Adeline held in her hand. She was holding it up high, and it was reflecting the light of the sun. "My pocket watch," he thought. "I need that." And then Adeline disappeared from view, and the rabbit hit the water with such tremendous force that his hat blew off his head. "Well, that answers that question," thought Edward as he watched the hat dance away on the wind. And then he began to sink. He sank and sank. He kept his eyes open the whole time. Not because he was brave, but because he had no choice. His painted-on eyes witnessed the blue water turning to green and then to blue again. They watched as it finally became as black as night. Edward went down and down. He said to himself, "If I'm going to drown, certainly I would have done so by now." Far above him the ocean liner with Adeline aboard it sailed blithely on, and the China rabbit landed, finally, on the ocean floor, face down, and there, with his head in the muck, he experienced his first genuine and true emotion. Edward Tulane was afraid. That was chapters 5 and 6 of The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. Thank you for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Goodbye.